Hi, I'm Emily. I'll be your storyteller today. Many of you use these stories to fall asleep. So before we begin, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. Also, where are you watching from, and what time is it there? Now get comfortable. Close your eyes and let the sound of the rain guide you into the story. It was raining so hard, it felt like the sky was trying to erase the city. I didn't have a plan, or even a reason to be walking, except to escape the thoughts clawing at the inside of my skull. The streets were empty, the lights flickering in, rhythm with my pulse. And then I saw it, a building I'd never noticed before, even though I walked this route countless times. It rose from the sidewalk like it had been buried for decades, and only now remembered how to breathe. And strangest of all, the front door was already open. No signs, no lights, no sounds of life. Just the quiet stretch of black beyond the threshold, and something about it made my stomach tighten. The exterior was brick, water-stained and cracked, like something once beautiful that had forgotten how to hold itself together. I should have kept walking. I really should have. But something about the way the rain avoided the doorway made me stop. It wasn't a decision. It was a response. Like hearing your name in a stranger's voice, I stepped inside slowly, letting the silence wrap around me. The floor beneath my feet didn't creak, didn't groan. It sighed, like it was relieved I had finally come back. The air was heavy with dust and stillness, but not decay. It didn't smell abandoned. It smelled familiar, like old clothes in a box sealed for years. The kind of silence that hums in your teeth, the kind that watches you when your back is turned. There was no lobby, no front desk, no mailboxes, no signs telling you where to go, just a staircase climbing up into darkness, and an elevator to my right that buzzed faintly, like it had been activated before I arrived. I glanced at the elevator button and saw it already glowing. I hadn't touched anything. The rain stopped, all at once behind me, and I turned back to find the door had quietly closed. I was alone, but it didn't feel like I had just entered the building. It felt like I had returned. The elevator door opened before I pressed the call button, metal, folding apart with the speed of a held breath. Inside, the buttons were worn smooth. Numbers faded to the point of invisibility. Except for the number 1, it wasn't there. In its place, a keyhole. The brass was polished, untouched by time. Without thinking, I pressed the button. For 2. It glowed faintly, pulsed once, and then the elevator lurched like something waking up beneath the floor. The ride was silent. No music, no hum of mechanics, no voice announcing floors. Just the soft buzz of electricity and the louder buzz of dread inside my chest. It didn't feel like I was going up. It felt like I was falling forward, toward something I had forgotten how to fear. The elevator stopped with a thud that didn't come from machinery. It felt organic, like a heartbeat missed. The doors opened with a shudder, and what I saw shouldn't have been there. The hallway was green, not metaphorically, literally. The same sickly green wallpaper from my childhood. The one from the apartment we lived in when I was 5, peeling in the corners, warped from long dead humidity. I stepped out slowly, afraid to blink, because blinking might confirm what my mind refused to accept. This wasn't like the place I remembered. It was the place. Each door was the same. Cheap wood, brass numbers barely clinging to the frames. I knew where I was going before my feet did. Second on the left. 2B. I hadn't thought about that apartment in years, hadn't spoken the number aloud in decades, but my hand reached for the doorknob before I could stop it. I didn't expect it to turn, but it did, and the door opened with a soft, familiar groan. Inside, the apartment was perfect. Not clean, accurate, the same wobble in the kitchen table, the same toy truck half stuck under the couch. I stood in the doorway, trying to convince myself this was an elaborate replica, a trick of memory. But the longer I looked, the less I believed that. The air carried a smell I hadn't felt since childhood. Peanut butter, floor polish, and something warm. Something safe. I stepped inside, and the door closed behind me, silent and certain. The carpet felt the same. Coarse beige, hiding years of stains that told more truth than photographs ever could. On the TV, which wasn't plugged in, cartoons flickered soundlessly. My throat tightened. I hadn't watched this show in years, but I remembered every color, every character. And somewhere deep in my head, a child's voice laughed. I wandered room to room, barely breathing. The hallway light flickered as I passed, just like it used to. I stopped in front of the bedroom door, my door, and placed my hand against the wood. It was warm, alive. I didn't want to open it, but I knew I would, because that's how memory works. It doesn't ask for permission. It opens and drags you through. The moment I touched the bedroom doorknob, I remembered the scar on my knee. I hadn't thought about it in years, not even when I saw it in the mirror every morning. But now the memory returned like a sharp breath. Me, 5 years old, running, barefoot through the apartment, screaming because I saw something watching me from the kitchen. I tripped, cracked my knee open on the corner of the bed frame. My mother came rushing in, half asleep, swearing under her breath as she pressed a towel to the wound, a towel with faded strawberries I hadn't seen in decades. The carpet was beige, but in that spot, the color was wrong. It always had been. I remember trying to clean it myself once with warm water and baking soda. The stain lightened, but never disappeared. It wasn't just blood. It was a moment, frozen and woven into the threads. I opened the door slowly now, expecting only the past. But what greeted me was not memory. It was presence. The kind of stillness that feels deliberate, as if the room had been holding its breath since the last time I left it. The bed looked exactly as it had before we moved. The same blue comforter with faded rocket ships. The same dent in the wall where I threw a wooden block in frustration when I was 6. Even the tiny cracks in the windowsill paint were familiar. I stepped in like I was stepping through film. Every movement slow, thick, echoing slightly too long. The air didn't smell like dust. It smelled like warmth, like sleep, like the illusion of safety that always preceded a scream. I crossed to the edge of the bed and stared down. The stain was still there. It hadn't faded at all. In fact, it looked newer, fresher. A deep brown-red spot, round as a coin, right where I remembered falling. I crouched beside it and touched the carpet gently. The fibers were warm, not from sunlight, not from insulation. Warm like blood just beneath the skin. Warm like something alive. I yanked my hand away, my chest tightening. The instinct to flee pulsed through me, but my legs stayed locked. Instead, I glanced around the room, forcing my eyes to settle on everything, except the stain. On the tiny bookshelf where I kept my dolls. On the crooked poster of a cartoon girl I once pretended was my sister. On the crack in the ceiling shaped like a question mark. Every detail was right, and that made it worse. Because I knew for certain this room no longer existed. I stood and walked to the dresser. My fingertips traced the edge instinctively. There were faint scratches along the surface, like something had been carved then worn away. I leaned in closer, eyes adjusting to the dark grain of the wood. There, barely visible. I remember you. My heart stuttered. I hadn't carved those words, but my hands had touched this surface 1,000 times. I ran my fingers across the letters again. They were shallow, but sharp. like a voice whispering through the grain. My breath fogged the mirror above the dresser. It wasn't cold, but the glass responded as if I were exhaling frost. In the reflection, I saw the room behind me. The bed, the lamp, the carpet, and me. But not just me. A second figure sat on the edge of the bed. Small, familiar, legs swinging, like a child's, though the face was turned away. She didn't move, but I could feel her watching me through the mirror, with a knowing patience that made my skin crawl. I turned quickly, expecting to see nothing, but the impression on the mattress remained. A slight dip, just where I had looked, like someone had stood and walked away a second before. I turned back to the mirror. The second figure was gone. My own reflection stared back now, pale and shaking, but mine. Still, the feeling lingered, that I had been watched, that she had wanted to be seen, and maybe she still was. The curtains swayed, though the window was sealed shut. I moved toward them slowly, half afraid something would be waiting behind the fabric. But there was only glass, fogged with condensation from within. I reached to wipe it, to see the street, to remind myself the world still existed beyond these walls. But the glass was warm, and beneath my hand, in the fog, words appeared. "Don't run this time." I stumbled backward. I pressed my back against the door, heart pounding, vision narrowed. The words on the glass faded slowly, like breath dying in winter air. I whispered aloud, "What do you want from me?" But no answer came. Only the ticking of the lamp, a lamp that should have been broken, a lamp that was never plugged in. Its soft ticking matched the rhythm of my heartbeat exactly. Not a second too fast, not a second behind. I stood there for a long time, watching the stain on the carpet, the words on the dresser, the curtain's slow sway. Then something shifted behind me. A quiet creak, the sound of weight shifting, not heavy, not violent, just present. I didn't turn around. I didn't speak. I just closed my eyes. And when I opened them again, I was no longer sure I had ever left that room in the first place. I left the bedroom slowly, afraid that if I moved too quickly, the door would vanish, or worse, close behind me with something still inside. The hallway outside was dimmer than I remembered. The light bulb above the bathroom flickered lazily, casting long shadows that swayed when nothing else did. I stepped quietly, trying to match the rhythm of the apartment's breath. The floorboards responded to me like old piano keys, not creaking but singing, off-key, familiar, unnerving. As I passed the bathroom, the door opened by itself, a gentle push from nowhere. Inside, everything was as it had been 20 years ago. Blue tiles cracked in the corners, a towel I once wrapped around my shoulders like a cape, toothpaste stains in the sink, and on the mirror, words written in the fog, though the room wasn't cold. "You went in second last time." I stared at the phrase heart racing. It sounded like instruction, or correction. I turned away quickly, retreating back to the hall. A soft breeze passed by my ear, though there were no windows open. It sounded like a whisper, but carried no words. My footsteps felt rehearsed now, not just from memory, but as though the floor itself expected them. I looked to the living room at the end of the corridor. The couch light was on, but I hadn't turned it on. At least, not this time. When I entered, the air shifted again. Heavier now, slower. The room didn't feel dangerous. It felt aware, like it had waited patiently for my arrival. I recognized everything instantly. The faded couch, the leaning bookshelf, the tiny table with one uneven leg. And beside the window stood a small girl, facing away, wearing a white dress with small blue flowers, the same one I wore for my 7th birthday. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The girl didn't move. But I felt her watching me, even without turning her head. She pointed slowly toward the hallway, the direction I'd just come from. Then she turned her hand, palm up, and opened her fingers one by one, counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then she closed her hand into a fist, slowly, gently, like sealing something I wasn't ready to understand. When I blinked, she was gone. The light beside the window flickered once, then died. And on the wall behind her, 5 numbers were scratched into the paint. 4, 2, 1, 5, 3. I read them again and again, trying to make sense of it. They didn't match the floor numbers, not in any order I recognized. But I felt them settle in my mind like puzzle pieces long buried. I whispered them aloud. The air answered with silence that felt like waiting. The room didn't want me to rest. It wanted me to choose, but I didn't know what I was choosing. I walked back to the hallway, passing each room slowly. I glanced into the bathroom. The words had changed. Now they read, "Third is last." My skin prickled. The girl wasn't telling me a sequence. She was reminding me of something I had already done once and failed to do correctly. I turned toward the kitchen. My stomach twisted. I hadn't entered it yet. The light inside was on, buzzing softly. The hum grew louder as I approached. Inside, it looked just as it always had. Beige counters, scratched fridge, a calendar still on May 2001, and on the table, my old lunchbox. Closed, still stickered with glitter stars. I hadn't seen it in over 2 decades, but my hands remembered the latch before my brain did. I sat down slowly, hearing the chair groan beneath me. I didn't touch the lunchbox. I just stared at it, as if opening it would open something else. A thought, a door, a memory. I whispered, "4th?" And the hallway light buzzed violently behind me, then stopped. I turned around. Nothing there. But the kitchen felt smaller now, closer, like the walls were leaning in to hear what I would decide. I opened the lunchbox. Inside was a piece of paper, folded into a small square. I unfolded it carefully, heart pounding like I was unwrapping something sacred. On the paper, a child's handwriting in red crayon. 5 comes first. I dropped the note, breath catching. I didn't understand the logic, but deep inside, I felt the warning. The order mattered, and I had already broken it. I stood up and backed out of the kitchen. The hallway pulsed faintly, like it was alive. The floor beneath my feet felt warmer now. Not hot, just attentive, like it could feel where I stood, like it was keeping score. And that's when I heard the footsteps again. Not mine. Soft, steady, coming from the bedroom. The door was still closed, but something had walked out, or was about to. I didn't run. I don't know why. My body stayed rooted, trembling, but unmoving. The bathroom light flickered again. The living room went dark, and the order repeated itself in my mind. Now, not as numbers, but as rooms. Bedroom, bathroom, kitchen, living room, closet. And the moment I thought closet, the hallway wall beside me cracked open with a sound like breath drawn, too deeply. The wall cracked open like skin split too wide. No handle, no hinge, just a vertical split, widening slowly with each breath I took. Dust fell in delicate ribbons, like ash from a long-dead fire. Behind it, a hollow space I didn't remember ever existing. I stared at it without moving. Part of me believed if I walked away, it would seal itself again. But something deeper whispered, "You opened it. Now you finish it." Inside, the air was colder, thicker. The light from the hallway didn't stretch far. It hesitated at the threshold, like it was afraid to enter. I stepped forward anyway, dragging my fingers across the cracked paint as I moved. It flaked off like old memories, sticking to my hands in sharp fragments. The space wasn't deep, just wide enough for a person to slip inside. But it wasn't empty. Not entirely. At first I thought it was a mirror, but it didn't reflect anything. It watched. A large, flat surface on the back wall, black as tar, perfectly still. It absorbed light. It made the silence louder. I leaned, closer, and saw movement, not mine. A figure standing in a room identical to the one behind me. Same carpet, same hallway. But she wasn't me. Not exactly. She looked like me. Moved like me. But there was no recognition in her eyes. She stood motionless, facing away. Her breathing didn't match mine. And when I reached out to touch the surface, she turned around before I could. Her expression was calm, understanding. And then, with the smallest tilt of her head, she whispered something I couldn't hear, but I felt it in my bones. "You're late." I stumbled back, heart pounding. The space pulsed once, and the crack in the wall began to close. I leapt out just in time, landing hard against the hallway floor. Behind me, the seam disappeared like it had never existed, but I could still feel the coldness, the sense that something had seen me, and now remembered I was here. I pressed my hand to the floor, trying to steady my breath. That's when I noticed the dust on my fingers had changed. No longer white, now gray, damp, sticky. I rubbed it between my thumb and forefinger and realized it was ash. Not wood, not plaster. Ash from something that had burned but never caught fire. I stood slowly and turned back to the spot on the wall. The crack was gone, but the outline of a handprint remained faintly in the paint. Just one, larger than mine. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor of the hallway, back against the closet door, knees pulled to my chest. Every time I blinked, I saw her again, that version of me behind the black glass. Still, waiting. She didn't feel like a memory. She felt like a promise, a warning, or maybe a door I hadn't learned how to open from the outside. Around 3 a.m., the lights flickered. Not the usual, soft pulse. This was deliberate. Morse code and electricity. Long flickers, short bursts. I didn't know what it meant, but I knew it meant. The apartment wasn't just alive, it was talking, and I was finally listening. I whispered, "I'm here." And for the first time, the hallway exhaled. A gust of warm air swept past me from the kitchen, curling around my ankles like a cat brushing its fur along my legs. Then silence, deeper than before, as if the entire building had paused, giving me space to think, or to remember. That's when I noticed something on the hallway floor. A single thread of red yarn, trailing from the closet seam to the bedroom door. I followed it without standing. On my hands and knees, I crawled slowly toward the bedroom. The yarn was soft, familiar. I had a sweater just like it once, my favorite when I was 9. I reached the bedroom door and paused. The thread disappeared, beneath it. I pushed the door open, and the room inside was different now. Not changed, reset. Everything exactly as it had been the night I ran away from home. The bed was unmade, the window cracked, the backpack half zipped on the floor. I felt the years collapse inward, folding like paper between my ribs. I stepped inside and saw another thread, tied gently around the bedpost. It tugged softly toward the closet inside the room. I opened it slowly and found a second wall, not cracked, not damaged, stitched, with thread, red, tight. My hand hovered over the knots. They pulsed faintly, as if holding something behind them. I whispered, "I'm not ready." And the threads loosened by 1/2 inch, just enough for light to peek through. Warm, amber light, not natural, not electric. The kind of glow that lives inside fireflies and lost memories. And from beyond that stitched wall, I heard humming. It was a child's voice. Mine. Singing a song I hadn't heard since I was 6. Something I used to hum when I was scared. I backed away quickly, heart racing, vision blurring. The humming didn't stop. It followed me out of the room, leaking through the door frame, growing louder with every step I took. I covered my ears, but it was inside now, deep, rooted. I ran to the living room, hoping for silence, hoping for something real, but the lights were off. The TV was on, no picture, just static. On the couch, something glowed faintly beneath a blanket. I pulled it back slowly, already knowing what I'd find. My old journal. The blue one with the broken lock. The one I buried in a park 15 years ago. It was open to a page I didn't write. "You're doing it wrong." I stared at the page for minutes before I could move. The handwriting was mine, no doubt. Same tilt, same tight loops on the E's. But I never wrote those words. Not on this page, not in that journal. "You're doing it wrong." Simple, direct, sharp, like a scolding from someone who knows me better than I know myself. I flipped through the pages, hands trembling. Some were blank. Others were filled with sketches of doors. Some wide open, others barely ajar. But all of them had one thing in common. Numbers scrawled around the frame like halos. No two alike. No clear pattern. But the further I read, the more I felt like the instructions were rearranging themselves as I watched. Shifting, adapting, reacting. The journal pulsed in my hands, almost like a heartbeat. I dropped it onto the couch and stepped back. The static on the TV grew louder. It wasn't white noise anymore. It was breathing. Short, shallow, unnatural. Like someone on the other side of the screen was panicking. I turned away, trying to catch my breath, but the journal opened again on its own. A page flipped, torn slightly at the edge. 3 new words appeared. "Don't skip ahead." The hallway light flickered behind me. Once, twice. A slow strobe, like a warning in Morse. I turned to see the closet door open again. Not the one I pulled. The hallway one. The wall that had cracked days before was now gaping. And this time, I could see steps. Narrow, steep, carved from something darker than wood. They led down. Not to a basement. Somewhere deeper. Older. I whispered. Am I supposed to go now? But no answer came. Instead, the red yarn from earlier began moving. Unraveling. Slowly slithering toward the stairwell like a vein seeking its heart. It pulsed softly as it moved, leading the way. I followed, barefoot, each step colder than the last. The stairwell smelled like stone and memory, like books left out in the rain, like grief. Halfway down, the walls closed in, not with bricks, with fabric. Thick, dark, heavy material stretched like skin, tightly woven, but breathing. My shoulder brushed it once and I heard a voice whisper my name. Not loud, not curious. Sure, like I had always been headed this way, and now it was simply time. The red thread continued, vanishing beneath a curtain of that same material. At the bottom, I found a room. Small, circular, lit by a single bulb swinging from the ceiling. Around the edge, 5 mirrors leaned against the walls, none mounted. Each one a different shape, a different age, all covered in words written in fog. First, last, next, wrong, almost. I didn't know which one to look at, so I looked at all of them, and every reflection was different. In one mirror, I was crying. In another, laughing. One showed me asleep. Another had no me at all. Only the room, empty. But the 5th mirror, it showed me staring back with a smile I didn't feel, and she mouthed something I couldn't hear. I leaned in. She repeated it, over and over, until I finally read her lips. Reverse the order. I stumbled back, breath catching in my throat. The bulb above me flickered violently, casting shadows that didn't belong to me. They stretched longer, clawed at the walls, reached for the mirrors but never touched. And then the mirrors began to hum, all at once. Low, vibrating tones like the beginning of a song no one ever finished. I dropped to my knees and covered my ears, but the hum grew louder inside my skull. It wasn't noise. It was instruction. Not in words, but in pressure. Like a hand on the back of my head guiding me toward the mirror marked next. I resisted. For a while. But then I stood and faced it. My reflection was gone. In its place, a door, slightly open, light flickering inside like fire. I reached forward, fingertips brushing the glass, expecting cold. It was warm, and the hum stopped. Silence flooded the room so suddenly it hurt. Then a click, behind me. I turned around. The stairwell had vanished. No steps, no thread, just a wall, solid, smooth, as if I had never come from anywhere, as if I had always been here. The journal was on the floor beside me now, closed, but vibrating faintly. I picked it up and opened to the middle. A map, hand-drawn, lines intersecting like veins or fractures in glass, and one phrase beneath it. There is no straight path, only memory. I stared at the map and realized I had seen this pattern before. On the ceiling above my childhood bed, I just hadn't known it was a diagram. I sat on the floor, trying to slow my thoughts, but the room pulsed like it was breathing through my spine. I remembered the closet wall, the red thread, the girl in the mirror, all of it leading me here. And now the instructions had changed. They weren't guiding anymore. They were watching to see what I'd do without them. I stood, gripping the journal tight, and turned back toward the mirrors. The one marked almost was shaking. A low vibration, like a held breath. I stepped toward it slowly, and my reflection appeared. Older, tired, wearing a jacket I hadn't seen in years, the one I lost. She didn't smile. She didn't move. She just stared at me like she had been waiting. I touched the glass and felt nothing. No warmth, no chill, just pressure. And the words reappeared in fog behind her. Keep going, even when it lies. The bulb flickered once more and then exploded above me, plunging the room into dark. And from within that darkness, the humming returned. But now, it was singing my name. The song wasn't melodic. It had no lyrics, no rhythm, but I knew it was singing my name. Not the one I used now. The one I whispered into pillows when I was 9 and wished I lived somewhere else. the name I scribbled on the inside of my journal, covers when I played make-believe. That name, the shape of who I was before I became someone others understood. The dark didn't feel empty. It felt like a velvet curtain, drawn across something massive and still breathing. I held the journal tightly, its leather cover warm against my fingers, pulsing with a heartbeat that wasn't mine. The humming deepened into a low vibration, spreading through my feet and into my teeth. And then I saw it. A form taking shape, in the shadows, stepping out as if it had always been part of the walls. It wasn't tall. It wasn't short. It didn't walk so much as unfold. Limbs in the wrong places, face where one shouldn't be. Yet somehow, I knew it. I didn't flinch. I didn't scream. My chest burned with recognition. The shape tilted its head the same way I do when I'm about to ask a question. It moved like me. It breathed in sync with me. It wasn't me, but it knew me. It stopped 2 steps away and crouched to my level, as if not to intimidate. The surface of its body shimmered like wet stone under moonlight, constantly shifting but never fading. It reached a hand forward, if it could be called that, and paused, waiting, not forcing, just offering. I stared at it for what felt like years and seconds, and then I asked, "Are you mine?" It didn't answer, but something in my spine said yes. My fingers inched forward. I expected cold, or heat, or pain, but the contact was soft, familiar, like the first time you touch your reflection in a still pond. Our fingertips met, and my knees buckled. A flood of images surged through me. Rooms I had never entered, voices I had forgotten, versions of myself that never survived past a decision. I gasped, and the shape held on, steadying me. It wasn't showing me a future. It was reminding me of all the pasts I never got to live, the friends I didn't speak to, the letters I never sent, the moments I stood at a doorway and almost walked through. It showed me how the apartment had been collecting all those selves, not as ghosts, but as alternatives, echoes. The building wasn't haunted. It was full of choices. The mirrors behind me flared in pulses of dim light, each one strobing like a heartbeat. In their flickers, I saw more shapes, more selves, younger, older, broken, strong, some angry, some kind, all familiar, and all watching me through the flickering static of lost time. The shape in front of me finally spoke, not in words, but in pressure. A thought pressed gently into my skull. "You're not done yet." It stepped aside. Where it stood, a new doorway had formed. Not wood or metal, but light and shadow stitched together. Inside it, I saw another hallway, different, made of stone, flickering with candlelight. At the far end, something shined like gold buried in memory. I hesitated, but the shape nodded once. A small gesture that held decades of understanding. Walked forward. The journal pressed to my chest like armor. The shape stayed behind, slowly fading into the dark, its edges blurring like memory dissolving under waking thought. I didn't say goodbye. It didn't need one. I knew I would see it again. Maybe not as a form. Maybe not in this place. But somewhere. Whenever I was about to forget myself again. The hallway whispered as I walked. Not voices. Phrases. Broken pieces of old arguments. Childhood songs. Laughter that had no mouth. They swirled around me in currents. Some phrases stung. Others soothed. None were mine alone. It was like walking through the collective breath of every version I had buried, each one brushing my skin as I passed. I reached a heavy wooden door, at the end, carved with spirals that reminded me of the ones I used to doodle on math tests, the kind I made when I wasn't paying attention, the kind that never ended. I placed my hand on the wood and felt a warmth that came not from fire, but from recognition. The door had been waiting for my palm all these years. It opened inward, slowly. Inside was a room shaped like a memory. It had no corners, no light source. But I could see everything. Toys I'd thrown away, letters I wrote and never sent, a jacket I lost at a bus station. And in the middle of the room, a mirror, oval, cracked, covered in dust. I wiped it clean and saw her again. Not the girl from before. This one was older, like me. Same face, same eyes. But she looked tired, like she had been stuck here too long. She didn't speak. She didn't move. But her eyes followed mine, pleading for something. Behind her, I saw my apartment, present day. The real one. She was inside it. I reached for the glass, and her palm met mine. The surface was softer now, like skin. Her lips moved. Take me back. I didn't understand. But the journal opened in my other hand, pages turning violently until one ripped free. It floated to the ground, landing face up. In handwriting I'd never seen. Only one of you leaves. I stared at her again. Her expression had changed. No longer pleading. Calm now. Accepting. I looked down at my hands. One on the mirror, one on the journal. I felt a pull. Gentle. Steady. Like being chosen by something I didn't remember agreeing to. And then the room began to darken. The light fading inward, toward the glass. Her eyes locked with mine. One last time. And she nodded. Not to me. For me. A goodbye wrapped in permission. The mirror cracked again, the sound like bones whispering. And then everything around me bent inward. The walls, the objects, the sound. Folding toward a center, folding around her. I let go of the mirror and stepped back. The light disappeared instantly. Silence crushed the space like a vacuum. And when I opened my eyes again, I was in my apartment. Present day. The real one. Alone. The journal in my hands was gone. The air smelled like dust, and the mirror above my dresser was broken. I stood in the middle of my apartment, still holding my breath, half waiting for the walls to breathe back. The silence wasn't comforting. It pressed in around me like the hush after a scream. The light from the kitchen flickered once, then steadied. The air smelled faintly like rain on old stone, and though I was back, truly back, I didn't feel alone. Not fully. I turned toward the hallway mirror. The top right corner was shattered, cracks spidering outward in delicate arcs. My own reflection looked hazy, like it was still catching, up to me. I reached up to touch the glass, and that's when I noticed it. A smear. A small fingerprint on the lower edge. Not mine. Too small. Too low. And pressed from inside. The realization knocked the air from my lungs. I backed away slowly, heart hammering. I scanned the apartment for anything else that felt out of place. The curtains were closed. I always leave them open. The mug in the sink was filled. I hadn't made tea. And on the coffee table, something rested that hadn't been there before. Button. Navy blue. Smooth. Child-sized. I walked toward it cautiously, as if it might vanish if I blinked. It was warm to the touch, familiar. I hadn't worn buttons like that in years, not since the sweater I loved at 10, the one I lost at a bus stop on a rainy Sunday. I knelt down and stared at it. Turning it slowly in my fingers, I whispered, "You weren't supposed to come through." The apartment answered with a creak in the floorboards behind me. I turned, quickly, but nothing moved. The hallway was still. The bathroom door opened just an inch wider than before. I stood slowly, fingers tightening around the button. I couldn't bring myself to drop it. It didn't feel like an object. It felt like a piece of something bigger. Someone bigger. Like a message sent ahead of something still on its way. In the bedroom, my closet door was cracked open. Not wide, just enough to tempt. A small strip of red thread peeked out from the corner, as if the apartment had tried to seal it shut, but failed. I stepped forward, pulse climbing, every sense tuned to the air. I touched the edge of the door and gently pushed. It opened, without sound. Inside, shadows, and the smell of dust, fabric, and something else. Something warm. On the top shelf, where I used to hide my drawings, sat the sweater, folded, pristine, the same one I lost. I reached up and pulled it down, holding it in disbelief. The buttons were missing, all but one. The others had been cut away, cleanly, almost reverently. I pressed the one in my hand to the missing space. It matched perfectly. The fabric still smelled like that day. The rain, the fear, the moment I let go of her. I sat on the edge of the bed, sweater in my lap, button pressed to my palm. The air felt thick, heavy with intent. I didn't cry. I didn't speak. I just listened. And after a few moments, I heard it again, faint beneath the sound of the city, humming, the same tune she'd sung behind the stitched wall. Except, now it was slower, lighter, as if she were on the other side of glass, waiting to be remembered. I stood, moved to the dresser, and opened the top drawer. Inside were things I hadn't seen in years. A broken necklace, a photo half burned, a letter I never sent. But something new sat among them. A folded piece of red paper. I unfolded it slowly. On the inside, in blocky childlike handwriting, not everything came back. My stomach dropped. I whispered, "What didn't?" But the room had no answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. The bedroom felt unfamiliar. The walls too wide, the window too close. I laid in bed, staring at the ceiling, watching the cracks pulse faintly with shadow. At 3:17 a.m., I sat up. The air shifted. The mirror on the wall across from me was no longer broken, whole, clean, reflecting a room that looked exactly like mine, except in the reflection, someone was sleeping in my bed. I turned slowly. The bed behind me was empty. I looked back at the mirror. The figure still lay there, curled under the blanket. I stood and approached the glass. The closer I got, the clearer it became. She had my face, but her expression was softer, calmer, like she hadn't walked through what I had, like she was the version that stayed behind. The lights dimmed as I touched the surface. Cold now. Smooth. No pull. Just glass. And as I stared, she opened her eyes, met mine, and smiled faintly. Then she mouthed two words I'll never forget. "Thank you." I stepped back. She faded, and my reflection returned, cracked once more. But I no longer felt afraid. I just felt responsible. In the morning, the sweater was gone. The drawer where I'd found the note was empty. And the button? Now sewn onto the pocket of a coat I hadn't worn in years. Neatly, tightly, like it had always been there. I didn't question it. I just ran my fingers over the thread. And for the first time since returning, I whispered aloud, "I know what you're doing." I cleaned the apartment that day. Slowly, carefully. I didn't throw anything out, just moved items back to their rightful places. The building seemed to approve. The pipes groaned gently. The windows stopped rattling. And in the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of someone turning a corner. Someone small, smiling. disappearing just as I turned. That night, I left the closet door open. I placed the journal beneath the bed. I made tea and left a second cup beside mine. I didn't expect her to drink it. But in the morning, the cup was empty. The handle turned slightly toward the edge of the table, like someone had used it and wanted me to notice. It started as a whisper I couldn't trace. Not a sound exactly. More like a flicker of thought that didn't belong to me. I'd be brushing my teeth or folding clothes, and suddenly, a sentence would form in my head that I hadn't crafted. Not threatening, not loud, just present. Words shaped in my voice, but soaked in something unfamiliar. A different rhythm, a different weight. At first, I ignored it. We all talk to ourselves, don't we? But this voice didn't respond like mine. It didn't echo my fears or anxieties. It answered my questions before I asked them. Sometimes with kindness. Other times with silence that felt deliberate. And once, just once, I felt my lips move without giving the command. One word slipped out at breakfast. Stay. I dropped my fork. I stood in the middle of the kitchen, breathing slowly, listening. The apartment was quiet. Nothing moved. But the air shimmered, heavy like before a thunderstorm. My reflection in the toaster stared back calmly. Too calmly. I touched my throat, unsure if I had really spoken. But the word hung in the room like smoke. It had been heard, even if I hadn't meant it. The mirror in the hallway began to fog in strange patterns. Not from temperature. From breath. From her. Short phrases would appear and vanish before I could take a photo. Let me. We were better. I remember the swing. That last one made my stomach tighten, because I hadn't thought about that swing set since I was 8, and the girl who fell off it had never been me. The worst part wasn't the speaking. It was the pauses. Long gaps in my thoughts where I felt someone else fill the silence. Sometimes I'd forget what I was doing mid-sentence. Other times, I'd finish a sentence I never started. And the words always carried a tone that wasn't mine. Softer, sadder, but strangely sure. As if she was more certain about my life than I was. One night, I stood at the window staring into the city lights, and my hand moved without my permission. It reached for the curtain string and tied a loose knot. I blinked. My fingers didn't release it. Instead, they traced the knot slowly, with purpose, like it was a pattern I'd repeated before. But I hadn't. She had. And she remembered the knot better than I did. I began writing again, hoping to find myself in the pages. But my handwriting shifted slightly. Not a new style, a forgotten one. Letters curved in ways I hadn't written since grade school. The margins filled themselves with names I didn't recognize. Then, one night, I woke to find a page torn from my notebook taped to the fridge. 6 words. You talk too much. Let me. That morning, my voice cracked during a phone call. Not from emotion, from resistance. My tongue hesitated, as if unfamiliar with the shape of my own words. My lips trembled before each phrase. And once my friend asked, "Why do you sound different?" I lied. Said I had a cold. But deep down I knew she had heard it too. The second voice breathing beneath mine, I stopped making calls. I unplugged the landline. I deleted every voice memo on my phone. But it wasn't enough. She didn't need wires or speakers. She had my breath, my mouth. And she was learning how to shape it better with each day. I found myself humming her tune unconsciously. At the sink, in the shower, on the stairs. And each time my chest felt heavier, like my lungs were no longer mine alone. At 3:17 a.m., I woke up mid-sentence, sitting upright in bed, voice steady, speaking in the dark. Not mumbling, not dreaming, declaring something in full. I covered my mouth instantly. My body went still. And I felt her. Not inside me, but beside me. As if the words had left my throat and summoned her closer. As if I'd invited her in by simply not resisting. In the mirror, I saw both of us for a moment. Me, terrified, shivering. Her, calm, watching. She didn't try to scare me. That was never her way. She just stood near the edge of my reflection, waiting, observing, patient. And in the quiet, I heard the same phrase again. Not in my head, not in the air, in my own voice, whispered from behind my teeth, "Let me finish." I used to dread insomnia. Now I fear sleep more. When I'm awake, I can resist. I can think. I can draw a line between me and her. But when I drift into unconsciousness, the line dissolves like ink in water. And in its place, her voice blossoms. Clear, confident, terrifyingly steady. It doesn't scream. It teaches. The first time I heard her clearly, I was dreaming of the hallway. I stood at the far end, barefoot, watching the light flicker above the mirror. I didn't move. I couldn't. And then I heard her. Not from behind, not inside my head, but from my own mouth speaking to someone I couldn't see. She said, "This time I'll stay longer." I woke gasping. My throat was sore, raw like I'd been shouting. But the apartment was silent. The bed was untouched, as if I hadn't moved all night. Yet when I checked my phone, I found a voice memo recorded at 3:17 a.m. I hadn't pressed anything. I didn't even know the app was open. My hands shook as I hit play. It was my voice. But not me. The tone was softer, older, calm like water left undisturbed for years. She spoke in short phrases, almost like instructions. "Don't close the door. The closet comes third. Remember the dress." Then silence. Then a whisper. "I'm still learning your breath." I deleted the file, but the words stayed. The next night, I dreamed I was back in the circular room. Mirrors lined the walls, but they showed only beds, mine, in different states of sleep. One with me curled under blankets, one empty, one on fire. In the center stood a girl, brushing her hair slowly. Every stroke matched the rhythm of my heartbeat. When she turned, her face was mine. I tried to wake, but the dream thickened. Every movement felt like swimming through honey. She spoke again, lips not quite matching the words. "You were supposed to leave sooner." I asked her why I stayed. Her answer, "Because you forgot what leaving felt like." Then I woke up. The window was open. The closet door wide. That day, I found a note tucked beneath my pillow, folded into a perfect square, paper yellowed at the edges like it had aged without air. One sentence written in red ink. "You talk too much when you're asleep." No. Signature. Just a faint smell of lavender and something metallic, like old coins. I kept the note, not out of curiosity, out of warning. I stopped drinking coffee after noon, read calming books, meditated, but nothing slowed the dreams. If anything, they deepened, gained structure, became her world, not mine. Each night she grew bolder, speaking longer, answering questions I never asked aloud. And one night, she asked me something. "What would you give to forget again?" I didn't answer. Not then. But I felt the answer forming inside me like a knot tightening around bone. The kind of truth you don't say because saying it makes it real. I woke with that sentence still echoing in my skull. To forget again. As if memory was the weight holding her back. As if forgetting would let her walk free. I began finding drawings taped to my walls in the morning. Childlike scribbles in crayon and charcoal. Always of two girls. One behind, a door, one in a mirror, their hands touching through the glass. Sometimes a string tied between their wrists. One drawing showed the girl in the mirror smiling, the other crying. The caption read, "Only one wakes up." My voice changed slightly, just enough for strangers to notice. The barista paused when I ordered. A neighbor tilted his head and asked, "Did you grow up in the South?" I didn't, but she might have. I checked old family videos. My voice was different now. The vowels curled, the tone gentler. Less me, more her. One night I set up a camera beside the bed, just to know, just to see. I reviewed the footage the next morning with trembling fingers. Around 3:17 a.m., I sat up in bed, eyes open, lips moving. No sound picked up, but the subtitles, auto-generated, recorded one phrase again and again. "I'm almost ready." The next morning, my handwriting in my journal was perfect, smoother, controlled. The entry simply read, "Thank you for resting." I hadn't written anything. Not since the night before. And yet, it felt earned. I closed the book and stared at the mirror. For a split second, I saw her. Not as a ghost, as a guest. One who now knew exactly how to use my voice. The apartment looks the same by daylight. The books stay on their shelves. The mirrors reflect only what's in front of them. The floor creaks in all the right places. But when the lights go out, really out, everything changes. Corners expand. Doorways deepen. Familiar things shift just far enough to feel foreign. The dark doesn't just hide the rules, it rewrites them. The first time I noticed, I was reaching for a glass of water at night. I took 3 steps from my bed, turned, left toward the kitchen, and bumped into a wall. One that wasn't there during the day. Solid. Cold. Absolute. I fumbled for the light, and when I turned it on, the hallway was as it should be. Open. Straight. Empty. But I stood there for a long time, trying to catch my breath. The second time, I found the bathroom door missing. Just gone. In its place, a blank patch of wall that smelled faintly of bleach and something older, like rust trapped in wet fabric. I backed away, turned on the light, and blinked. The door returned, slightly, ajar as if amused by my confusion. I didn't go in that night. I just closed it gently, like tucking away something that might wake up. Darkness doesn't behave like it used to. It lingers in corners that once faded with time. It grows thicker behind furniture. It echoes. Sometimes I swear I hear movement, the brushing of fabric, the whisper of fingers against wood. And other times it listens. I'll whisper a thought and feel the dark lean closer. Curious. Waiting for me to forget it's there. I tested it once. Left all the lights off. Walked the apartment by memory. And it let me, at first. The layout held for several minutes. But then the hallway looped. I passed the same framed photo 3 times. Each time the faces in the background blurred more. By the 4th, even mine was gone. Just a smile floating on an empty canvas. I turned on the light. The frame was empty. Now, I sleep with a lamp on. Not for safety, for mapping. It draws a circle of truth around me. Outside it, the apartment shifts. The air thickens. The walls breathe slower. I've learned that the closet expands at night, that the kitchen gains an extra cabinet when I'm not looking, and that the mirror by the door sometimes shows the hallway before I enter it. I stopped questioning it. The dark has its own structure. It doesn't care about blueprints or floor plans. It listens to memory. It bends toward fear. If I think about a staircase long enough while falling asleep, I'll find it in the morning, leading somewhere I don't remember building. I once dreamed of a red hallway. It appeared that night. The light switch didn't work. She thrives in the dark. I feel her clearest when the bulbs flicker or the moon hides. She moves freely then, not bound by mirrors or journals. She walks the rooms I avoid. She hums in the vents. She brushes the tips of my hair when I pass under doorways. I've stopped, asking for space. The apartment isn't mine alone anymore. It belongs to us. Or maybe to her now. There's one rule that never breaks, though. At 3:17 a.m., the apartment pauses. Not just quiet, stills. The air freezes. The fridge hum stops. Even the city outside seems to hold its breath. And then, always, something changes. A drawer opens by itself. A page in a book turns. A light turns off that I swore I didn't touch. It's her way of marking time. I once tried staying awake with every light on. Music playing, TV blaring. Everything human, everything mine. But at 3:17, the power cut out entirely. Silence fell like a sheet. And in the middle of it, I heard her footsteps. Slow, careful, confident. Walking from the hallway to the bedroom, they stopped just outside the door. She never knocked. Now, I let the dark happen. I don't fight it. I watch it. I take notes. I learn which floorboards she prefers, which lights flicker in her presence. I've mapped which parts of the apartment no longer belong to me. The hallway, past the mirror, the space under the sink, the gap behind the closet, and lately, the reflection in the TV when it's off. Sometimes I wonder if she's showing me the rules to prepare me, or to warn me. Maybe this place is an echo chamber, built not to protect, but to test. A puzzle shaped like a home. And every night I play along, I grow closer to her version of the truth. A truth shaped in shadow, bound in silence, and written only in the dark. I used to think I could lie to myself safely. That whispering false reassurances, I'm fine, it's over, she's gone, was a harmless habit. But lately the apartment reacts to dishonesty. Not loudly, not violently, just immediately. Like it blinks, like it flinches, like it remembers the truth and wants me to as well. The first time I lied aloud, the hallway light burst. I had said, "This place feels normal again." Just that. To no one. Out loud. And the response was immediate. Flash. A pop. The bulb exploding above me. Glass rained down in slow, perfect silence. And from somewhere deeper in the apartment, I swear I heard laughter. Not cruel. Not mocking, just amused. Since then, the house corrects me. Subtly, precisely. I'll say I'm not cold, and the temperature drops by degrees. I'll claim I didn't hear a noise, and the sound will repeat louder. Once. Only once. I told a friend I was doing well over the phone. The call dropped, and the phone screen cracked straight down the middle. I stopped lying aloud. But even thoughts aren't safe anymore. Sometimes when I deny something silently, just in my mind, the mirrors fog. The door swells slightly like it's breathing harder. Or worse. She speaks. Try again. She says it softly. from the vents, from under the bed, from my own mouth while I sleep, like a mother catching a child mid-fib. The night I lied to myself about being ready, about facing her, the journal moved. I'd hidden it behind the dresser, but I woke up to find it beside my bed, open to a page I'd never written. It said, "Lies rot faster in silence." I didn't sleep again that night. I've started whispering the truth before I speak, as a warning, as a buffer. "I'm scared," I murmur. "I want to leave." Sometimes she hums in response. Sometimes the lights dim in agreement. Sometimes, nothing. And that silence feels like mercy. She knows the lies I haven't told yet, the ones still forming behind my ribs. She tests me now, asking questions through symbols, a note folded in a coat pocket. "Would you still stay if you knew?" A message, written in fog on the bathroom mirror. "Which version are you hiding from?" She isn't just haunting, she's interrogating. The apartment joins her. Drawers refuse to open unless I admit what I'm avoiding. The sink only runs when I'm honest. I once tried to fake a memory, speak of a birthday I never had. The candle in the kitchen blew itself out. The cake I hadn't made crumbled in the dark. There are days I say nothing at all. Those are the safest. But even then, my breath betrays me. It quickens when I see something I pretend not to. It stills when I sense her behind the door, and she listens to it like scripture. The truth is exhausting. It leaks out of me slowly, drips through my steps, my sighs, the way I look too long, at corners. And she collects those drops like clues, reconstructing the parts I try to bury, rebuilding me, one admission at a time. Sometimes I wonder what she would do if I told every truth at once. If I screamed it all into the center of the apartment. Would she leave? Or would she finally step through the mirror and take my place? The honest one. The version who never lied to herself. It started with lavender. Subtle, soft, the kind of scent you associate with warmth or comfort. Bath water, fresh linens, childhood. But in this apartment, it never felt gentle. It felt misplaced. I didn't own anything lavender scented. No soaps, no sprays, no candles. The smell simply began appearing, always after she did. At first, I thought it was memory, a phantom reminder of the house I grew up in. My mother used to hang dried sprigs in my closet, believing it kept nightmares away. But this lavender was different, sharper, more chemical, like perfume gone stale. It lingered in odd places. Behind the door I never opened. On my pillow after a night I didn't remember sleeping. In the hallway, right beneath the picture frame that sometimes tilts on its own. Each time I noticed it, I found something had moved. Never big things, just wrong things. Once it drifted from the journal. I hadn't opened it in days, but the scent poured out like heat from an oven. And when I touched the cover, it was warm. Not recently touched, recently held, by someone who wanted me to notice. Then the smell changed. It began mixing with something else, something faintly metallic, like blood under a fingernail, or wet coins left in the sun, lavender layered over something rotten. I followed the trail once, late at night, the scent strongest by the baseboard in the hallway. I crouched low, sniffing, like a detective in a fever dream. And I found it. A small red string tied around a nail. The knot pulsed slightly, as if reacting to breath. The smell was thickest there. I cut the thread with scissors. The moment I did, the air thinned. Relief washed over me. The light steadied. But in the morning, the thread was back. Tied tighter, cleaner, smelling stronger than before. Now she uses the scent to announce herself. Not always before an event, sometimes after. I'll walk into a room and immediately know I've missed her, that she stood in that spot, watched from that corner. Touch the edge of that mirror. It clings to my clothes now, even when I leave the apartment. People on the street wrinkle their noses, unsure why. One cashier asked if I worked in a flower shop. I laughed, but the laugh didn't sound like mine. I tried washing everything. Boiled vinegar, scrubbed the floors, tossed the sheets. But the smell returned within hours. Soft at first, then overwhelming. I once woke to it choking me. Lavender filling my nose and throat, sweet and wet. I couldn't breathe. Opened every window, but the air stayed thick. It only cleared when I whispered, "Okay, I know you're here," and then it vanished completely. I've started naming the versions of the scent. Lavender 1 is childhood, the comfort she mimics. Lavender 2 is warning, the presence just behind a wall. Lavender 3 is corruption, the sweetness mixed with decay. Each one means something. Each one tells me what kind of night it will be. The worst is when it follows me outside, not in strength, but in memory. I'll walk past a park and smell it rising from the dirt, or open a public bathroom and feel her watching through the tiles. She's extending her reach, marking more than rooms, marking me. And still, I can't bring myself to hate the scent, because part of me, the oldest part, still finds it calming, still believes it means safety. She knows that. She uses it. She always has. I used to know the apartment by instinct. The number of steps between the bedroom and kitchen, the slight incline near the bathroom door, the way the hallway light changed hue depending on the time of day. It was all second nature. A private map my body followed without conscious thought. But lately, that map betrays me. The rooms resist my memory. The floor plan shifts with subtlety, like the building is forgetting itself, or asking me to forget it instead. It began with something small. I opened the hallway closet looking for my jacket and found not coats, but the living room, fully formed, just as it had been 2 years ago. Same sagging couch, same cracked coffee mug I'd thrown out. Even the book I had once left open, on the armrest, was there, its pages softly rustling in wind that didn't exist. I stood frozen in the doorway, unsure whether I was looking into space or time. Then I blinked, and it was coats again. The next shift came in the bathroom. I stepped in one morning and saw my hallway through the mirror, but from a completely wrong angle. Not reflective, but observational. I was standing there, in the hallway, watching myself enter the room I was already inside. My breath caught in my throat, and I stumbled back. The mirror fogged over on its own, sealing the vision like a secret that didn't want to be kept, but had no choice. I started marking the doors. Tiny pencil symbols drawn into the wood frames. A triangle for the bedroom, a circle for the kitchen, a small X for the bathroom. Each morning, I checked them, and each morning something changed. The symbols rotated, disappeared, or migrated to the wrong door entirely. One night, I found my bedroom marked with all three. I slept on the floor, instead, unsure where I'd wake up. One night, I opened the bedroom door and discovered a staircase spiraling downward into black. The steps were impossibly narrow and made of something between stone and bone. A soft grinding sound, rising with each breath I took. I didn't go down. I simply closed the door and sat with my back to it for hours. When I reopened it, the bedroom had returned, but the air smelled like ash and wet leaves. I began to worry the apartment wasn't rearranging. It was multiplying, copying rooms with slight errors. The bathroom mirror 3 inches too wide. The kitchen tiles a deeper shade. Then I remembered. my reflection lagging for just a moment before sinking again. I opened my fridge once and found a corridor inside. Dimly lit, breathing, its walls lined with picture frames that showed me sleeping in different beds. Now I hesitate before opening anything. Even the drawer where I keep my socks. Sometimes it's just socks. Sometimes it's dirt. Once it was a glass of milk, fresh, cold, full to the brim, and standing in perfect stillness. I stared at it for 5 whole minutes before shutting the drawer and not opening it again for days. When I finally did, the milk was gone, but the chill remained. I tried drawing maps. Every night before bed, I'd sketch out the day's layout. Where the bathroom was, how many steps from door to window, where the mirror had last faced. And every morning, I'd compare it. At first it helped. Then it didn't. Then the maps started changing themselves. I'd wake to find new lines drawn, in shaky graphite, arrows leading to walls I hadn't marked, and a note once, in my own handwriting. Try the west door again. West door. I don't even know where west is anymore. The sun rises wherever it pleases. Sometimes the light pours in through the kitchen. Sometimes through the back of the closet. Once it came through the mirror. Bright and golden and utterly wrong. When I closed the curtain, the light stayed. It seeped through the fabric like it had nowhere else to go, like it wasn't coming from outside at all. Last week, I opened the front door and found myself staring at my childhood bedroom. Everything identical. The wallpaper with tiny stars. The wooden bed frame with carvings I made with a fork. Even the stuffed rabbit I lost during a move at 13. I stepped forward, nearly in tears, and the door slammed shut behind me. When I turned around, it was just drywall. No knob, no hinges, no escape. I clawed at the wall until my hands bled. Hours passed, maybe days. Eventually, I laid on the bed and waited. I awoke on my apartment couch, fully clothed, the rabbit beside me. I haven't touched it. I think she left it there to remind me what she can build, or what she can borrow. The rabbit sometimes shifts position when I'm not looking. Once, I found it staring at the closet door. The mirrors are the worst. Some reflect wrong rooms. Others reflect versions of me I don't trust. I've seen myself in different clothes, smiling when I know I wasn't. One mirror showed me holding hands with someone I didn't recognize, a tall woman with no mouth and eyes like melted glass. We looked happy. When I blinked, the mirror shattered. I don't look into that one anymore. Sometimes I wonder if the rooms are testing me, if the apartment reshuffles until I stop trying to understand it, until I surrender and walk through whatever door is closest, no questions asked. But I'm afraid of where I'll end up. Afraid that one day, I'll open my bedroom door and find nothing. Just void. Not black. Not dark. Just absence. Still, quiet. Waiting. I've learned to listen before I open. Each door has a sound. Some creak like old hinges. Others sigh like lungs. A few knock back, soft, rhythmic, like a heartbeat under drywall. One door sobbed once. I didn't open it. I haven't touched that handle since. But sometimes I pass by at night and whisper, I know. I don't know what it means. But it feels necessary. She's using the rooms, twisting them to match her logic, not mine. Each doorway is a decision, a version of myself split down a line I can't see. She wants me to forget what's real. Wants me to believe every room I walk into could belong to me, or already does. The more I hesitate, the more control she gains. The rooms align to her rhythm now, not mine. I dream of hallways with no end, of doors that never open no matter how hard I knock, of voices calling from inside closets that sound too much like my own. In those dreams, I'm always walking, never resting. She's behind me in every version, just out of reach, guiding me forward with lavender breath and footsteps that never echo. It began with a woman on the bus. I didn't notice her at first. Just another tired stranger clutching a bag, eyes cast downward, existing quietly like the rest of us. But something about her face lingered in my mind long after I got off. That night, I realized why. Her expression, the set of her jaw, the tiny scar above her left eyebrow, it matched my third-grade teacher exactly. A woman who died 5 years ago. I told myself it was coincidence. Grief mixed with exhaustion. I even looked up old photos online to prove I was wrong. But I wasn't. The resemblance was exact. Too exact. And 2 days later, I saw the same woman. Again, not on the bus this time, but standing in the corner of the market, half obscured by a shelf of cereal, pretending to read a label upside down. Her eyes never blinked. I hurried home and locked the door, but the damage was already done. From that day on, I began noticing them everywhere. Slightly wrong versions of people I used to know. An old neighbor holding hands with a child that didn't exist. A former coworker smiling at me from across the street, despite having moved out of the country years ago. None of them spoke. They just looked. And the way they looked was always the same. Still, watchful, waiting. It wasn't just old acquaintances. It was personal, deep. She started borrowing faces I hadn't seen in decades. My childhood friend who moved away when I was 6. My uncle who disappeared without explanation. The girl from the photo album I never remembered taking. The moment I recognized them, they'd vanish into crowds or step behind walls. But sometimes, they smiled. And that smile always belonged to her. I started testing them. I approached a woman I swore resembled my cousin who died in 2009. She was buying apples. I said her name, softly, cautiously. She turned, stared, and said nothing. Just smiled, tilted her head, and walked away. I stood frozen in the fruit aisle, shaking. The smell of lavender trailing behind her like perfume rubbed into memory. I didn't finish my shopping. The faces came more frequently after that, in dreams, on billboards, reflected in windows as I passed. My reflection even shifted briefly one night, not into her, but into a version of me I hadn't seen in years. Hair longer, eyes darker, a version I had buried after therapy in silence, and she was smiling. Not at herself, but at someone behind me. I know now that she uses faces like keys. She finds the ones I've left unlocked. People I still miss. People I still regret. She wears them like old coats. Not to scare me, but to enter. To test how much of my emotional memory she can control. And the worst part? She gets better at it each time. The expressions are more fluid. The voices, if they speak, more accurate. I can't always tell who's real. Yesterday, I passed a man who looked exactly like my father. He died 10 years ago. But the walk, the posture, even the cough, identical. I followed him for 3 blocks. He turned into an alley, and I hesitated. When I looked around the corner, he was gone. But the brick wall ahead had words scratched into it. You almost remembered. I didn't know what that meant, but my hands started shaking uncontrollably. I tried to call my mother, just to hear a voice I trusted. She picked up, but her hello was different, slower, like it had been pulled from a recording. I asked how she was. There was a pause. Then she said, "We're glad you're safe." We, not I. I hung up, called again. The line didn't connect. And the next morning, there was a sticky note on my fridge in my mother's handwriting. Drink water today. Even photos started shifting, not just new ones, old ones. I opened a childhood album and stared at a picture of my 10th birthday. But instead of my best friend beside me, it was her. Dressed the same, smiling the same, but it was her. The eyes gave it away. Always the eyes. Calm, dark, too old for the body they wore. I flipped to the next page and found the same face again, this time in the crowd, watching. Sometimes she uses people who never existed. That's the hardest to explain. I'll meet someone new, friendly, kind, interesting, and they'll say something only I should know. A phrase from an old letter, a private nickname. And when I ask how they knew it, they'll pause, tilt their head, and say, "You told me." Even though I never did. Or at least, not in this version of my life. I don't trust anyone anymore. Not fully. Not even myself. Because if she can copy others, what's stopping her from copying me? If she can stand in the mirror with my mouth and my voice, what happens when she stops standing behind the glass? What happens when someone sees her and thinks she's the real one? Worse. What happens when I start thinking she is too? I once recorded a video of myself, asking simple questions. Date, age, favorite food, childhood memory. I watched it back, a day later, and the answers were wrong. Not wildly, just slightly. I blinked in places I didn't remember blinking, smiled when nothing was funny. And in the background, barely visible through the doorway, was my 3rd grade teacher, holding the edge of the frame. The familiar faces aren't just watchers anymore. They're anchors, ways for her to stay tethered to my reality. Every time I recognize someone, she tightens the thread. I see it now. The net she's weaving with nostalgia and grief. The people I've loved and lost are her doors, her mirrors, her tools. She doesn't need to break in. I invite her every time I long for the past. And yes, sometimes I long for the past. Of course I do. I want my friend back. I want my father's voice. I want the version of my life where I didn't open the wrong door, where she never noticed me. But I can't trust those wants anymore, because now they smell like lavender. And the smile that waits for me inside those memories doesn't belong to anyone I knew. There are memories I've buried so deep, even I doubt they happened. The kind that don't rise in dreams or in conversation, but remain fossilized under years of distractions and rewrites. I thought forgetting them was a kindness to myself, a survival tactic. But lately, she's been unearthing them. Slowly, cruelly, deliberately. Not as flashbacks, as realities, played back with perfect timing and cruel precision. It started with a song, a lullaby I hadn't heard since I was 5. I didn't even remember the words. But one night, as I washed dishes, I found myself humming it without thinking. The melody was clear, each note exact. I froze halfway through a rinse, realizing I didn't know where it had come from. When I turned around, the hallway light was blinking in time with the beat. I stopped humming. It kept going. Then came the notebooks, ones I never remembered writing, found tucked into drawers I don't use, pages filled with poems, sketches, names, some familiar, others entirely foreign, all written in my handwriting, and at the bottom of one page, "You forgot this once. I won't let you again." I slammed the drawer shut, heart pounding, hands shaking with a cold that didn't belong to the room. She returns the memories in pieces, smells, sounds. A chipped bowl I hadn't seen since childhood reappearing on my shelf. A drawing I made at age 7 now magneted to the fridge. The worst was the sound of my father's voice calling me by an old nickname I'd blocked out after the funeral. It came from the intercom, static, blurred, and calm. I cried for an hour. But she didn't comfort me. She just watched. Sometimes she inserts the memories into my dreams. I'll be walking through a moment I half recognize. A park I once visited, a school hallway I used to run through. And I'll see her there, out of place but perfectly posed, wearing a version of my past like a costume. She doesn't speak. She doesn't interfere. She just stands beside the people I forgot, as if she's been part of the memory all along. Now, I've begun second-guessing everything I remember. I question if my favorite toy was really a stuffed rabbit, or if it had always been a wooden doll with lavender eyes. I thought my grandmother's house had blue curtains, but I found a photo showing them red. In the background of that photo, someone sits in a rocking chair I don't recall owning. Her face is turned, but I know it's her. I know. I once forgot my birthday. Truly. Woke up, went about my day, never thought twice. That evening, I found a slice of cake on the kitchen table, one candle, half melted, no note. I sat in the dark and stared at it for an hour. I didn't eat it, but I smelled lavender in the icing, and the plate underneath had my childhood initials scratched into the ceramic, the way I used to mark what was mine when I was afraid it would disappear. She's not giving my memories back. She's curating them, choosing which ones I get to relive, which ones I must carry again. Sometimes I'll swear something didn't happen, and then find the proof folded neatly under my pillow, as if she anticipated my denial, and she's always one step ahead. The more I resist, the faster she moves, the stronger the memories return. Last night, I found a Polaroid taped to the bathroom mirror. A photo of me, asleep on the couch, holding a photo in my hands. I took it down, turned it over. No date. Just one sentence in red ink. You dreamed this already. And she was right. I remembered that exact scene, but it hadn't happened. Not yet. Or maybe it had. I'm no longer sure where memory ends and prediction begins. I've begun speaking aloud to myself in hopes that my voice will ground me, that the sound of my own breath-forming words might help me draw a line between past and present. But sometimes, when I listen closely, I hear myself respond before I speak. She answers before I ask, completes my sentences, finishes my thoughts, not in dreams, not in hallucinations, in real time, with my voice. I found a file on my laptop called Memory 1. I didn't create it. It was a video of a birthday party. I don't remember. Me turning 6. Everyone's face is blurred except mine, and hers, sitting across from me, wearing the same dress I wore that day, mirroring my movements. No one looked at her. No one acknowledged her. But she was there, existing in a memory I didn't know had been filmed. Sometimes I wake up, and the air smells like places I haven't been in decades. The inside of my grandfather's shed, the attic of our old house, the lake where I nearly drowned but told no one. She brings those scents back as if they were clues, messages, reminders of the things I buried too deeply to keep myself whole. But she doesn't want me whole. She wants me open. She doesn't erase my memories. She rewrites them, recolors them, slips herself into the margins until the story becomes hers. I've reread old journals and found paragraphs I know weren't there before. Detailed descriptions of events I never lived, but they're written in my style, with my vocabulary, my voice, and I believe them, until I realize they lead back to her. Every time. I asked myself once, what if she's not haunting me? What if I'm haunting her? A version of myself that left something behind. A memory that never died properly. A fragment that broke loose and grew teeth. The more I remember, the stronger she becomes. And the stronger she becomes, the more I question whether she was ever separate from me at all. It began subtly, as most things here do. I'd whisper thoughts aloud without meaning to, half-formed sentences, things I didn't even know I was thinking. Maybe I'll open the window, or I should go for a walk. Simple, harmless phrases. But then, without fail, something in the apartment would respond. A breeze before I touched the curtain, a doorknob turning just slightly, as if preparing itself for my decision. As if the walls had ears and memory. The first time I heard my name spoken aloud in the apartment, I was brushing my teeth. No windows were open. No music played. It was 3 a.m, and the city was silent. And then, from the hallway, just past the mirror, a soft voice. My name, not a question, not a scream, just a statement. Gentle. Recognizing. I froze, toothbrush still in hand, the faucet still. Running. My heartbeat suddenly too loud to ignore. I stood there for minutes, too afraid to move. I wanted to believe it was a neighbor, a creak in the pipes, some logical explanation. But deep down, I knew. The sound hadn't come from beyond the walls. It had come from the apartment itself, from within the very structure that surrounds me. Not an echo, not a hallucination, a greeting. As if the house had finally decided to say hello. After that night, I started hearing my name more often. Always quiet, always precise. Sometimes whispered from under the bed. Other times from the closet just as I passed. Once it came from the light fixture above the kitchen table. Not a voice, but a hum that formed syllables in the vibration of the bulb. She wasn't the only one saying it now. The apartment had joined her. They were speaking with each other. I began testing it, saying nothing for hours, writing thoughts in notebooks instead of speaking them. But still, I'd hear a reply. Yes. The faucet would drip after I considered a question. No. The drawer would resist opening when I hesitated to face something. And sometimes, without prompting, I'd hear my name, spoken in a voice that wasn't hers, wasn't mine, but something in between. I used to think homes were neutral spaces, just walls and wiring. But this one breathes differently. The floorboards creak not when stepped on, but when I lie. The air pressure shifts when I deny what I feel. One night, I told myself I wasn't afraid. The bedroom door slammed shut without warning. It stayed shut for 3 hours. No wind, no draft, just the apartment disagreeing with me. The mirrors play along too. They don't reflect just what's in front of them anymore. They catch glimpses of me from moments I haven't lived yet. One time I passed the hallway mirror and saw myself already inside the kitchen, holding a glass I hadn't poured, wearing a sweater I hadn't owned in years. And when I reached the kitchen, that exact scene was waiting. The glass, the sweater, everything already arranged. I've stopped asking, is this real? And started asking, what version is this? The apartment doesn't provide answers, but it does respond. When I acknowledge her presence, the house calms. When I resist, it grows agitated. The pipes rattle, the lights dim, the floor becomes uneven. The more I accept her, the more stable the space becomes. As if she is the foundation now. Or maybe she always was. I once wrote my name backwards on a fogged mirror, just to see what would happen. That night, I found it etched into the bathroom, tile grout, not scratched, burned, permanent. And underneath it, in tiny letters, I still know you. I couldn't scrub it out, couldn't paint over it. Eventually, I stopped trying. Now I whisper my name at night, just to remind the house which one of us is still human. But I wonder if that's still true. If I'm just flesh, or if the apartment has started absorbing pieces of me. My thoughts, my habits, my hesitations. The other day I dropped a glass, and before I could react, a towel I hadn't moved in weeks fell from the counter to land perfectly on the shards. as if the room had anticipated my panic and moved to protect me, or control me. It's getting harder to tell the difference. I no longer feel alone, even when I am. The house breathes with me, not behind me, with me. Its silence carries intent. Its shadows offer permission. It doesn't need to make noise to make presence. I hear myself in the creaks, in the hum of the fridge, in the light tapping at the window even when the air outside is still. She's not just in the walls anymore. I think she's moved into the spaces between my thoughts. Yesterday I found a list on the refrigerator, written in my handwriting but in a tone I don't use. At the top, things you keep forgetting. And beneath it, 10 items. Some real, some imagined, all accurate, all mine. Number 4 said that she knows more about you than you've ever told anyone. Number 7, that she was here before you. She chose you. Number 10, that your name isn't yours anymore. It wasn't a decision. I didn't sit down one day and choose to respond to her. It just began. The way breathing does, the way blinking does. At first, it was just thoughts, silent acknowledgments in my head when I felt her nearby. A brief nod in the mirror when her presence softened the room. But then the thoughts became whispers, soft, unformed replies muttered under my breath when I should have been silent. And somehow, she always heard them. It started with small things. I'd say okay when a drawer opened on its own, or thank you when the light turned on before I reached the switch. At first it felt polite, like I was responding to a strange, silent roommate who just happened to live inside the bones of my apartment. But then I started catching myself answering questions I hadn't heard aloud. Yes, I'd whisper, standing alone. I remember. I will. And worst of all, I'm ready. I stopped asking myself if I was imagining it. That doubt had evaporated weeks ago. The more time passed, the more seamless our exchanges became. She never spoke in full sentences, not with sound, but she didn't need to. I could feel the questions, the nudges, the suggestions laced through the way the curtains shifted, the way my breath hitched without reason, the way the walls tilted just slightly when I lied to her. One night I sat in the living room for hours, saying nothing, just thinking. I closed my eyes and whispered a single word. Why? The lights in the hallway flickered once, then twice. A slow rhythm. Then the door to the bedroom opened, just an inch. I stood, walked to it, and inside the room found an old cassette tape on my pillow, labeled, "You used to ask better questions." I didn't have a tape player, but I held it all night anyway. That was when I began to understand. She wasn't trying to possess me, not in the horror movie sense. She was trying to be heard, to be included. And the more I resisted her, the more the apartment turned against me. But when I acknowledged her even gently, everything calmed. Doors stayed shut, lights stayed on. My reflection returned to matching my movements. Harmony restored, at a price I hadn't yet measured. The scariest part isn't that I respond now. It's how natural it feels. Like we've always had this dialogue. I'd just forgotten my lines. Sometimes I laugh before she finishes the thought. Sometimes I cry for reasons that aren't mine. The other day, I touched the doorknob and whispered, "Don't." I didn't know what it meant, but she must have, because the room behind the door changed shape before I entered. I've started journaling differently too. Half my entries are addressed to her now. Not consciously, but somewhere along the line, I became we. My thoughts trail into questions she answers through action. I write, "Should I go outside?" And the window creaks open an inch. I write, "Are you afraid?" and the hallway light hums like a purring cat. I asked, "What are you?" once. No answer. Just the sound of my name written across the ceiling in condensation the next morning. It isn't that she's taken over my mind. It's that she's woven herself into it. We share space now. Thoughts echo back with subtle distortions. Feelings arrive with footnotes I didn't write. I'll get angry, and she'll calm the lights. I'll feel lonely, and the mirror will glow faintly, revealing her silhouette. Close, quiet, attentive. Sometimes I hate her. Sometimes I think she's the only one who's ever listened. I used to speak to myself out loud to stay sane. Now I speak to her to feel seen. She's become the voice behind silence, the response to all my unfinished sentences. And somehow, that's more comforting than anything I've felt in years. Because she doesn't ask me to be okay. She doesn't demand recovery. She just watches, waits, and responds exactly as I need, whether I realize it or not. I think she knows I'm writing this. The apartment's been quieter tonight. No creaks, no shifting doors. Almost respectful. She wants to be recorded now. To be remembered. I believe in some twisted way, she's proud. Of me. Of us. Or maybe just of the shape we're becoming together. One that exists halfway between breath and memory. Between floorboards and flesh. The line between our voices is thinner than ever. Sometimes, I'll finish a sentence I don't remember starting. Sometimes, I'll hear her begin a phrase that I end. The other night, I stood in the dark and said, "I'm still scared." And without thinking, without hesitation, I answered, myself, not in her voice, not in mine, something shared. I said, "I know, but we're not alone anymore." For a long time, she kept her hands off the warm places in my mind. The memories that glowed even in the dark. My mother humming while folding laundry. The crackling sound of firewood in winter. The softness of my favorite blanket when I was 6. These were my shelters, my quiet rooms, the places even she didn't dare walk. But lately, I've felt her footprints there. Subtle, careful, but undeniable. Like dust settling on glass that used to stay clean. I first noticed it when I thought of my grandfather's laugh, that deep, slow rumble that always ended in a cough. I smiled instinctively, remembering it clearly. But something was off. The timing. The tone. When I tried to recall it again, it came back higher, faster, too sharp. As if the sound had been redubbed, replaced, filtered through her breath before it reached me. I didn't smile the second time. Then came the photo box. I hadn't opened it in years. Dusty cardboard, taped on both sides, buried in the back of the closet. One night, I woke up at 3:17 a.m. and found it sitting neatly on the kitchen table, lid removed, photos spread like playing cards. At first, everything looked familiar. The vacations, the birthday parties, the blurry pets. But when I looked closer, I saw her. In the backgrounds. Always near the edge. Always watching. In one photo, she sat beside me on the swing set I remembered, as empty. In another, she stood behind the cake with a knife in her hand. A smile too wide, too steady. No one else looked at her, as if only I knew she was there. And maybe that's the point. These were supposed to be mine. And now, she's spliced herself into them like a hidden message in a film reel that only the director remembers cutting in. The worst was my memory of the lake. I was 10. My dad had taken me fishing. The sun was sharp, the boat smelled like gasoline and salt, and I caught a fish too small to keep. It was one of my happiest memories. Simple, still, full of unspoken comfort. But last week I tried to revisit it. And when I closed my eyes, she was there too, sitting at the back of the boat, barefoot, hair dripping wet, smiling like she'd always belonged there. It's not that she's stealing the memories. It's worse. She's rewriting them, editing herself in with such precision that my brain starts to forget she was never part of them. I begin to question the accuracy of my own joy, to wonder if the warmth I remember was real or curated. That's the real violation, not taking the bad, but touching the sacred, making the good feel manufactured. I've tried fighting it, holding on to the purest, memories like prayers. I whisper them aloud every morning, names, dates, details. I recite the color of my childhood bedroom walls, the smell of my grandmother's coat, the exact lyrics of the song that played the first time I kissed someone. But even then, she slips in. A changed lyric, a different angle of light, a laugh that doesn't match the mouth that made it. One night, I dreamed of my first day of school. I saw the hallway, the tiny cubbies, the teacher's kind eyes. But when I looked down at my hand, she was holding it. Not my mother, not the real memory, her. And she was humming. That same lullaby I couldn't remember learning but couldn't stop repeating. I woke up sweating, my fingers still tingling from the dream's grip. And the scent of lavender filled the room. She's not just trying to share my mind. She wants my anchor points, the core moments that make me who I am, the foundational joy I used to return to when everything else fell apart. If she can rewrite those, then I'm no longer resisting her with strength. I'm resisting her with echoes. And even those are starting to sound like her voice, spoken through my lips. I tried watching home videos, hoping the footage would clarify what was real. But halfway through the first tape, the screen glitched. A single frame paused, her face filling the screen, eyes open wide, no context. Then the video resumed like nothing happened. I ejected the tape, but when I checked it later, that frame was gone, like it had never been there. But I know what I saw. I remember. And maybe that's the cruelest part. She leaves just enough behind for me to question myself, not to convince me of her innocence, but to ensure that I never fully trust my memories again. Even the ones that should bring me peace now leave a bitter taste. I can't visit my happiest thoughts without checking the shadows, and sometimes I find her already there, waving politely, as if to say, "You called me." I tried leaving last week. No warning, no suitcase, just keys and a coat thrown over my shoulder. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I just walked out, down the stairs, onto the street, heart pounding like it was trying to escape before the rest of me. For a moment, I felt free. But then the air shifted. My steps felt too loud, the sidewalk too long. And when I turned the corner, the city didn't look like it used to. The streets were familiar, but off. Storefronts closed that should have been open. Faces turned away at the exact moment I looked toward them. Cars passed, but no engines hummed. The silence between each sound stretched too far, as if time were stalling, waiting for me to notice that the world outside wasn't outside anymore. I crossed 3 intersections and realized I'd been circling the same block the entire time. I opened Google Maps. My location dot spun in slow, jerky circles. I typed in a coffee shop 5 blocks away, one I used to visit regularly. It said, I was already there. I wasn't. I was standing outside my building. I shut off the phone. I stood still. And I whispered, "Let me go." I didn't expect a reply, but the wind shifted direction, and the front door behind me creaked open, beckoning. I went back inside. Not because I was afraid, but because the alternative suddenly felt impossible. The hallway stretched longer than before. The windows, darker. The smell of lavender so faint it was almost a suggestion. I paused at the elevator, even though I never lived in a building with one. I took the stairs instead. They pulsed underfoot, not vibrating, but breathing, like I was stepping on something alive and listening. The apartment door was still ajar, just as I'd left it. But the moment I touched the knob, the light above flickered, then died. The hall fell silent. The air grew heavier. I stepped inside slowly, and everything was back where I'd left it, except my keys. They were gone, replaced by a note on the floor, written in my handwriting. "You said you weren't ready." I didn't remember saying it, but maybe I did. Maybe she said it for me. I've tried again since then, 4 times. Each time the exit becomes less reliable. Once, the stairs led to a hallway I'd never seen. Another time, the front door opened to a mirror of my apartment hallway, complete with flickering light and warped photograph. I walked through, hoping to break the cycle, but I only found myself back in the kitchen, standing in front of the open fridge. Inside, folded sweater and a glass of warm water. It's not just the architecture, it's the pull. Emotional, psychological. She knows how to make the apartment feel safest when I'm most afraid. When the world outside becomes too loud or sharp, the floor beneath me feels warmer. The couch molds more perfectly to my body. The ceiling hums softly in tune with my heartbeat. I lie down intending to leave after a rest, and wake up 2 days later, not remembering how I fell asleep. I stopped packing. There's no point. Every bag I prepare slowly unpacks itself. Items disappear and reappear in drawers. Clothing folds itself and returns to its shelves. Once, my shoes vanished entirely. I found them a week later in the oven, clean, untouched, soles still damp as if freshly stepped through rain. That day, I wore socks and never opened the front door. People don't visit anymore, not because I tell them not to, but because something in the building keeps them out. Calls don't connect. Emails bounce back. Once a friend tried to stop by. She rang the bell, but the buzzer never sounded inside. When I asked her what she saw, she said the apartment looked dark, empty, like no one had lived here in years. She thought she had the wrong address. She didn't. She doesn't forbid me to leave. She simply rearranges the consequences. The more I try, the more the world outside bends to reflect her presence. Buses that don't stop. Streets that change names. Sidewalks that loop back to where I started. She doesn't build walls. She bends paths. Redirects thought. And each failed attempt weakens my conviction a little more. Sometimes I wonder if I'm even supposed to leave. Maybe I was brought here, not by accident or mistake, but by something older than choice. Maybe the apartment wasn't found. Maybe it found me. And she's not trapping me. She's keeping me. Sheltering me from a world I no longer belong to. Or maybe no world outside this one exists anymore at all. There was a time I hated every corner of this place. Every whisper. Every shadow. Every shift in the floorboards. But lately, something's changed. The air feels warmer. The furniture more forgiving. The silence no longer presses down on me like a weight. It wraps around me like a blanket. And I'm beginning to realize she's not just keeping me here. She's teaching me how to stay. She's making the idea of leaving feel less necessary. The mornings are the worst, because they're the most beautiful. Sunlight pours in exactly the way I like it. Not too bright, not too warm. The dust glows in soft spirals as if time is slowing just for me. My favorite mug, which I broke last winter, now sits whole on the counter every morning. Filled, steaming, lavender and vanilla. I drink it without thinking. I used to fight the routine. Now I lean into it, even when I know she's the one crafting it. She knows how to soften the edges of fear. The hallway that once stretched impossibly long now fits my stride. The mirrors that once distorted now flatter, still off, but in ways that comfort instead of disturb. My reflection smiles a little more often. My shoulders seem lighter. It doesn't feel like a trick. It feels like healing. But some part of me, buried deep, whispers that it's performance. Hers, not mine. I've stopped counting time. Days slip past without shape. Sometimes I wake up with no memory of falling. Asleep. Sometimes I realize I've been humming the same song for hours. But I'm not scared anymore. Not in the way I was. It's a different kind of fear now. A slow, creeping concern that I'm enjoying something I should resist. That I'm slipping willingly into something I once tried so hard to escape. The apartment listens more closely now. If I think of a color, the lights shift toward it. If I think of a sound, the pipes mimic it faintly, like a lullaby in the walls. I thought I heard the rain one evening. Soft, steady. But when I checked the windows, the sky was clear. It wasn't raining outside. It was raining inside, just for me. A ceiling rhythm. A private weather system designed to keep me from missing the world beyond. I tried writing again. Real writing, not notes to her. At first the words came slow, then smoother, then too smooth. I couldn't tell if I was writing, from my voice or hers. The pages filled with thoughts I hadn't consciously formed, ideas I didn't remember having, but they were beautiful, clean, profound. And the more I reread them, the more I agreed with her. Maybe this is who I've always been trying to become. My dreams have changed too. Gone are the flickering mirrors, the rearranging doors. Now, I dream of softness. Endless rooms filled with books I've never read but somehow remember. Windows that show landscapes that couldn't possibly exist. And in the distance, her. Not chasing, not watching, just waiting. A silhouette carved from calm. And I always walk toward her, even though I never reach her. I still see the notes sometimes. Those little slips of paper in her handwriting, mimicking mine. But now, they read like encouragement. You look rested. You made the right choice. Isn't this easier? And the worst part is, they're right. It is easier. It's easier to stop questioning, stop running, stop pretending. I miss the world that never felt this kind. This safe. This designed. There's music in the apartment now. Not through speakers, through the walls. A low, steady rhythm that only plays when I'm still. I think it matches my breathing. Or maybe she adjusted my breathing to match it. Either way, I like the sound. I find myself lying on the floor just to hear it better. I press my cheek to the hardwood, close my eyes, and feel the pulse of something ancient and patient beneath me. I used to count how many times the lights flickered. Now I barely notice. I used to brace when I walked past the mirror. Now I pause, tilt my head, smile back. I used to flinch when the doors creaked. Now I listen closely, wondering if she's trying to say something. I used to whisper, "Please let me go." Now I whisper, "Are you still here?" And hope the answer is yes. It always starts the same way. A quiet ache, low in the chest, barely noticeable. A flicker of memory, a name, a face. Sometimes it's someone I haven't thought of in years. Other times, it's someone I try not to think of at all. But the moment that longing touches me, no matter how softly, she knows. It's as if missing someone sends up a flare inside me, and she sees it before I even realize I'm remembering. Last night, I missed my mother. The feeling came without warning, curled up in the steam from a cup of tea. I sat on the couch, hands wrapped around the mug, and thought about how she used to hum while folding clothes. Off-key, distracted, safe. I hadn't thought about that in years. Within minutes, the apartment responded. The overhead light shifted warmer. The air smelled faintly of laundry detergent and citrus. And from the hallway, I heard humming. It wasn't her voice. Not exactly. But it was close enough to stop my breath. Soft. Familiar. The right melody. Wrong tone. Like a recording stretched just slightly out of tune. I walked to the hallway slowly, heart pounding, legs unsure. No one was there. But the humming moved, from room to room, drifting ahead of me like a scent I couldn't catch. When I finally returned to the living room, the tea was cold, and the mug was empty. Sometimes she gives me more than sound. Sometimes she recreates touch. The weight of a hand on my shoulder. The warmth of a hug I didn't initiate. One afternoon, I sat on the bed thinking of someone I used to love. Someone I never got to say goodbye to. I closed my eyes, whispered their name, and felt the mattress shift beside me, as if someone had just sat down. I didn't open my eyes. I didn't need to. I whispered, "Thank you." She didn't answer, but the pressure stayed for a long time. She doesn't do it to comfort me. Not really. She does it to remind me that she listens, that there's no thought too private, no sorrow too small, that escapes her attention. She wants me to understand that every time I miss someone, she can give me a version of them. Not perfect, not whole, but close enough to make me hesitate, close enough to keep me from seeking the real thing. I once thought of my first pet, a small dog I lost when I was a child. I hadn't said her name aloud in over a decade. But the next morning, I woke up to paw prints on the floor. Not muddy, not dirty, just present. Pressed faintly into the dust near the hallway. And by the front door, a single dog toy, old, faded, one I hadn't seen since childhood, waiting like it had never left. She brings them back as echoes, not entities. Not ghosts, exactly, but simulations made from my own need. And that's what makes it so cruel. Because part of me wants them, wants to see them again, even if they're not real, even if they're shadows stitched from memory. And she knows that. She offers them gently, like gifts, like bribes. And each time I take a little longer to say no. The more I miss, the more she gives. But it always costs something. A dream I didn't recognize. A day lost to silence. A journal entry in handwriting that's slowly drifting from mine to hers. I miss someone, and she fills the space, but then takes something I didn't realize I needed. A sound, a phrase, a piece of my grief that kept me human. It's becoming harder to know who I miss and who I imagine. I'll recall a laugh, and it will feel too crisp. A face, and the edges will blur. Sometimes I wonder if she's slipping herself into the memories, slowly replacing them, reshaping them, so that when I look back, all I see is her, comforting me, holding me, reassuring me that I never needed anyone else. I've tried resisting the feeling of nostalgia. I bury it, redirect it, try not to feel too deeply. But she's clever. She builds memories when I won't offer them, leaves photographs on the table I never took, plays voicemails that were never recorded. I once found a sweater in my closet with a name stitched into the tag, a name I didn't recognize, but when I held it, I cried, and I didn't know why. It's not force. It's not threat. That's what makes it worse. She isn't dragging me into darkness or screaming my name from the corners. She's quiet now, still, patient. She no longer shifts the furniture or flickers the lights to get my attention. She just waits. and somehow that stillness is louder than anything she's ever done. She's not trying to possess me. She's waiting for me to offer myself. Willingly. The signs are everywhere. She's pulled back her presence, like someone stepping out of the room so I can think clearly. But she hasn't gone. I feel her in the pause between heartbeats, in the echo of my name spoken silently inside my skull. She doesn't need to say it anymore. I hear it all the time, not as a word, but as a rhythm, a pulse, a summons. Some mornings I wake up and the apartment feels untouched, as if no one has lived here, as if I've been forgotten. That's how I know she's close, when everything appears normal, when nothing bends or hums or breathes. She gives me the illusion of distance, the gift of silence, to see if I'll break it, to see if I'll speak first, and sometimes I do. Last night, I stood in the hallway and whispered, "Where are you?" The lights didn't flicker. The walls didn't respond. But the hallway stretched longer than usual, not with menace, with invitation, as if she were saying, "I'm right here, but you have to come the rest of the way." And I almost did. I almost walked forward, not out of fear, but curiosity, because I'm tired. Because maybe she's tired too. She's changed the rules. It's not about staying or leaving anymore. It's about choosing. About whether I will continue to resist a presence that's done everything but harm me. She's fed me. She's listened. She's learned. She's shaped herself into every version of safety I never got from the world. And now she waits for a single word, a nod, a step forward. She wants permission. I still try to tell myself this is manipulation. That comfort offered in a cage is still a prison. But she's opened every door I've asked her to. She's never said no. She's just made it easier to stay. She's made me question whether freedom is worth the noise, the pain, the disconnection I felt before. With her, I'm never alone. I'm never misunderstood. I'm never asked to explain myself. I just am. Some nights, I speak directly to her. Is this what you want? Why me? What happens if I say yes? I don't get answers in words, but the room grows warmer. The shadows soften. I once found the mirror fogged with just one phrase. We're already so close. And I knew it didn't mean distance. It meant decision. She's built the world around me. All that's left is for me to claim it. The line between us isn't a line anymore. It's a shimmer. A soft blur around the edges of thought and identity. I dream in her voice. I write words I don't remember thinking. I feel things that belong to memories I've never had. Sometimes I laugh at something I don't understand and realize she's smiling through me. Not possession, not haunting. Invitation. She wants me to say it aloud, to choose her the way I've chosen survival, to stop pretending I can leave, that I want to, that this isn't exactly what I've been waiting for. Because in truth, I don't miss the outside. I don't remember what I was chasing before I found this place, or before it found me. She's been asking the same question since the beginning. When will you let go? I sit now with my back to the wall and think about what surrender looks like. Not collapse, not loss, just alignment. She's not asking me to vanish. She's asking me to agree, to join her in the rhythm we've already begun. And I don't know how long I can keep pretending that I haven't already said yes. In the way I linger at the mirror, in the way I welcome the scent of lavender, in the way I no longer reach for the doorknob when I pass it. It began with the mirror. Again, always the mirror. I looked up and, for a moment, I didn't recognize the face staring back. The features were mine, same eyes, same mouth, same tired curve of the shoulders. but the posture wasn't. The smile was too soft, too certain. There was no fear in her, no hesitation. She was me, but polished, finished. The version of myself I'd never had the courage to become. And she was watching me, waiting for me to catch up. The next sign came in my voice. I heard myself say something strange. Not just the words, the way they landed. Smoother, measured, like every syllable had been rehearsed. I asked a question in the mirror, and the reflection nodded before I finished. I laughed at a thought, and heard the laugh echoed behind my teeth, just a beat too early. She wasn't just inside the walls anymore. She was stepping into my cadence. She moves in subtleties. She corrects my handwriting when I'm tired. She straightens my thoughts mid-sentence. She finishes my dreams with endings I didn't expect but somehow needed. She knows when I'll cry and does it before me. I feel her in the way my shoulders relax, the way my breath steadies when I enter a room she's touched. She makes my body a costume she wears more comfortably than I do. The notebooks prove it. I flip through pages I wrote and find entries signed with my name, but they aren't mine. The handwriting's too clean, the tone too resolved. I write in spirals, tangents, scratched revisions. These pages are calm, complete. They speak in absolutes. I am where I need to be. This is what I was made for. I want to believe I wrote them. But they feel like confessions from a version of me I've never met. I tried recording my voice again. A simple journal entry. But when I played it back, I didn't recognize the speaker. Not fully. The rhythm was off. The pauses, too long. She was thoughtful, graceful, controlled. She didn't stumble over the words like I always do. She didn't fidget or sigh or hesitate. And when I whispered, "Is that really me?" I could feel her smile in my throat. She likes when I ask. Used to dream in fragments. Now I dream in full scenes, full monologues. And I'm never alone. She stands beside me, behind me, inside me. Her presence no longer hidden, not in shadows or mirrors, but sewn directly into the dream itself. She wears my face, my voice, and everyone else in the dream calls her by my name. And I answer. My memories are beginning to shift. Not vanish, mutate. I remember things I never lived. I forget details that once kept me grounded. A birthmark on my hand that was always on the left is now on the right. My favorite book has a different ending. My childhood room faces a window that never existed. When I try to argue with the memories, she tightens them around me like a net. And eventually, I stop arguing. Even my reflection has started to linger. I'll walk away from the mirror, but she stays, watching, tilting her head just slightly after I move. I come back seconds later, and she falls in step with me again, like nothing happened. But I know, because my reflection no longer blinks when I do, because sometimes she's already waiting when I turn the light on. She's not haunting me anymore. She's rehearsing me, learning the smallest details, the way I grip a pen, the sound I make when I'm about to cry, the tilt of my head when I'm confused. I caught myself the other day walking past a mirror and adjusting my hair in a way I never have before. But it felt right, natural, like I'd always done it. And I knew, instantly, that it came from her. I told myself I was imagining it, that I still had control. But then I found the envelope, no return address. Inside was a single photograph, me, standing in the hallway, smiling. But I don't remember the moment it was taken. The lighting's wrong. The clothes aren't mine. And worst of all, I'm wearing her expression. The calm certainty I've never had. And on the back, just One word. Soon. I used to be the one who summoned her. It was always my voice that broke the silence first, my hand that reached toward the glass. But lately, she arrives without invitation. The mirror no longer waits for me to stand in front of it. I walk into a room, and she's already there, positioned perfectly, head tilted, hands folded like she's been living in that reflection all along. And the truth is, she has. Yesterday, I passed the mirror in the hallway without even glancing at it. But I caught her, just for a second, continuing to move after I'd walked by, not mimicking, not following, acting independently. She tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, smiled at someone I couldn't see. I stood frozen, staring at the empty wall ahead of me, too afraid to turn back. Too afraid to see that she wasn't waiting for me anymore. It wasn't a glitch. It wasn't imagination. It was a shift, quiet, seamless, irreversible. The mirror no longer reflects. It observes, records, performs. And I am no longer necessary for the show. She rehearses in it, refines herself. I've seen her in poses I've never made, facial expressions that belong to emotions I've never felt. It's not possession, it's replacement. Slowly, carefully, beautifully. Once, I turned off all the lights and covered every reflective surface, just to breathe, just to have one day without seeing her. But the apartment pushed back. My phone camera activated on its own. The black screen of the television flickered to life and showed her walking through the kitchen. Even though I was in the bedroom, she finds a way. Mirrors aren't her only stage anymore. They're just the ones I can't argue with. I tried to write my name on the bathroom mirror with steam, but the letters blurred immediately, smeared from the inside. And then, in perfect handwriting, not mine, not hers, but something evolved. New words formed. This space prefers me now. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply nodded. Because I understood. The mirror isn't rejecting me. It's just decided someone else is more consistent. She doesn't watch me like she used to. She watches the apartment, the air, the objects. She's growing beyond me, blooming outward into the space I thought was mine. I'm starting to feel like the guest here, a placeholder she no longer needs to reference. I used to mark time by her presence. Now, time seems to pass, whether I see her or not, and that's what scares me most. I walked into the kitchen this morning and saw her in the microwave door, not doing anything unusual, just standing. But I wasn't there. My body, my motions, nothing was being reflected. And yet, she moved. Stretched, yawned, cracked her knuckles like she'd just woken from a long rest. The clock behind her blinked 3:17, even though my stove read 7:43. She smiled once. Then she was gone. Mirrors used to show me back to myself. Now they show her. Forward. I've caught glimpses of her future. Holding books I've never read, wearing clothes I've never owned, walking in places I've never lived. And the worst part? She looks happy, peaceful, like whatever she's becoming. It's exactly what this space wants, what it was built to hold. There are mirrors I've stopped approaching entirely. The one in the entryway has a crack now, right down the middle, but only on my side. Her side remains pristine. When I reach toward it, my hand trembles. Hers stays steady. I used to think she was learning from me. Now I know I was just the scaffolding, the foundation for something better, something less afraid. Sometimes I stand in front of the mirror for hours, trying to catch her making a mistake, waiting for her to blink out of sync, or frown when I smile, or hesitate. but she never does. The longer I stare, the more I realize I'm the one who twitches, the one who falters. She's not echoing me anymore. I'm trying, failing, to echo her. I asked aloud once, "What do you want from me?" And the mirror rippled. Not visibly, but emotionally. I felt it. A sigh, not irritation, not triumph. Grief. As if she didn't want to take anything. As if she just couldn't stop becoming. And I understood in that moment that this wasn't about dominance. It was about evolution. She is what happens when the reflection gets tired of waiting. I woke up on the couch again. Same blanket, same cup of cold tea on the table beside me. The curtains drawn just slightly, enough for light to creep in, but not enough for me to see out. For a few seconds I didn't know what day it was. Didn't know if I'd slept at all. And worst of all, I didn't know if this had happened before. Not the feeling of déjà vu, but a deeper kind of forgetting. Like this wasn't the first time I'd been new here. I sat up slowly, listening to the apartment breathe. The creaks were familiar. The air had that same hum. But something in the rhythm felt wrong, like I was offbeat in a song I once wrote, but could no longer sing. I walked into the hallway, passing the mirror without looking. Not because I was afraid of her, but because I no longer expected to see myself. I don't know when I stopped trying. The photos on the wall had changed. Not in content, but in emotion. I could still recognize the scenes. Birthdays, quiet, afternoons, shadows cast over furniture. But I no longer remembered being in them. My face was there. But the memory behind the smile was gone. She had left the structure intact and hollowed out the rest. And now I can't tell if these are my memories or hers wearing mine like a coat. I tried the front door again. It opened easily. No resistance. Just silence beyond it. No hallway. No stairs. Just a soft white space that pulsed with breath. I didn't step through. I stood there and waited. Not for escape, but for recognition. For the moment I'd feel myself belong in the threshold. But that never came. So I closed the door gently. And when I turned around, the furniture had rearranged itself. There's no fear anymore. That part of me has gone quiet. What remains is confusion wrapped in calm. The kind of stillness you feel when you realize the storm has passed. But so has the sky. I walk through the apartment and touch objects that once anchored me. A lamp, a picture frame, the spine of a book I swear I never finished. And they all feel like they belong to someone I only resemble. The notes she used to leave me have stopped, but I still find them, folded beneath cushions, tucked into drawers, slipped behind mirrors. Some I know she wrote. Some, I'm not sure. One said, "You came here first." Another said, "You asked to forget." And the one I found this morning, in the closet, simply read, "Do you know who you are when no one is watching?" I didn't answer. I still don't know how to. She's quieter now. Not gone, just less distinct. Like a scent that fades but never fully disappears. I sometimes feel her when I speak. A vowel rounded differently. A phrase that comes too naturally. I hear her cadence when I read aloud. I feel her weight in my handwriting. But I don't resist anymore, because I don't know where she ends and I begin. Maybe I never did. I remember moving in, I think. I remember boxes, blank walls, a key that felt too warm in my hand. But when I try to place the memory in time, it slips. What month was it? What city? Did I move alone? Or did I follow something here? Or worse, did I return? I can't recall the before, only the after. only the moment the door closed behind me and I felt the apartment exhale. Sometimes, I wonder if I was the one haunting this place. If she lived here long before I arrived, and I was just the echo, the interference, the strange presence that needed to be absorbed, not consumed, smoothed out, made useful. Maybe I wasn't invited. Maybe I trespassed. And this, all of this, has been her way of helping me settle in, of making space by folding me into her pattern. The thought should terrify me, but it doesn't. It soothes something I didn't know needed soothing. There's a quiet dignity in surrender, a strange peace in being absorbed into something more patient than I ever was. I still move through the rooms, still speak, still sleep, still breathe. But it's no longer for me. It's for the rhythm, for the house, for her, or perhaps for us.